Hi, good night, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tuesday Night Bible Study. How's everybody doing? I hope we are having a great evening and a great morning, great night. I'm not sure where you may be streaming from or what time zone, as well as if you saw this live or later. But I am, as ever, Brother Johnny Germain Alcock. This is the Elsha United Church's Tuesday Night Bible Study. We are on the fourth part of a five-part series in relation to financial management, money management, and things in relation to how the Bible teaches us things to be wise about in relation to our finances. And the title, How the Bible Teaches to Be Wise with Money. This one for tonight will be quickly talking about the parts that we tend to have the most difficulties with, which include borrowing money, doing loans, credit cards, mortgages, which is mostly the expenditure part. Last week, I tried to delve into some things in relation to income, or either increasing the income or using the income that you do currently possess to be saved and invested in areas to then assist you at some later stage. If you missed that, you can always go back and check it out from a previous video on our Facebook page or on our YouTube page. Thank you everybody for coming on. Please do, if you are streaming in, say hi to everybody who is on and ask any questions. There will be a few Bible scriptures, some taken from Exodus chapter 22, Luke 6. We'll have a quick discussion about Nehemiah. We'll have some uh, verses as usual from Proverbs. We've been using those a lot because they've given us some insight on wisdom from Solomon and other persons who wrote in that book about financial matters and how to deal with resources and things like that. And the famous set of verses from Deuteronomy 28. We'll have a little bit of a talk or a discussion on that. Please, if you are joining, share this with a friend, share it with somebody who you presume would like to know some things about these things. And please do also find ways to ensure that you are tuned in and are, learning something. Maybe you want to ask a question. Maybe you want to share something with somebody. Exodus 20 is the first bit of scripture I am going to try to share. 22, sorry, from about the 25th to the 27th verse. If you can hear, please do put a thumbs up as well as see what is on the screen. Exodus 22 is it's a part of what I'm going to discuss here, where I'm trying to show you that both the Old and the New Testament blends together quite cohesively to show you things in relation to the laws that God gave to Moses to help the people to be able to do things well. And it all ties back to living properly with your neighbor. It all ties back to doing things in a manner that doesn't hurt or impede those who are around you. Exodus 22 is part of a longer section in Exodus from chapter 20 onwards that lists many types of laws, and then it starts to break down the Ten Commandments into things in relation to loving your neighbor and doing well with your neighbor. In verse 22, verse 25, it says, if you lend money to one of my people among you who is needy, do not treat it like a business deal. Charge no interest. If you take your neighbor's, most people probably don't know that these things are in the Bible. If you take your neighbor's cloak as a pledge, return it by sunset, because that cloak is the only covering your neighbor has. What else can they sleep in? When they cry out to me, I will hear, for I am compassionate. And with that bit of phrasing, I will just go quickly into a prayer and then we can begin everything that we have here. And let us pray. Lord Jesus, we thank you very much for the time that we've been having discussing finances. Thank you that you have brought us to this part of our lives where there are so many things that are happening, but you still are true. You're a God who allows all the things in relation to life to come together so that we are working towards common goals. God, wherever there may be any dysfunction, wherever there may be any financial hurt, or rather, hurt between persons who are trying to do something financial, but it did not work correctly. Or it is that we have owed somebody and we're trying to figure out how to pay it back or figure out assisting those who are around us. Or if it is we are in another direction and persons owe us, and we need to figure out how to collect the debt and or even do what Jesus suggests, which is to be neighborly and or in some cases charge no interest or in some cases just rescind the debt. God, help us to live peaceably with each other. Allow us to forgive. Allow us to deal with our resources and our time and our talent and how we look at our finances well, so that we can be wise like serpent and harmless as doves. You led us this way for a reason. Allow us to see the lessons from Father Moses, many of the other servants that we spoke of in the first episode, and also some of the wisdom from Proverbs. Allow it to lead us so that we can manage our finances well, but also at the points where we need to figure out borrowing or doing things on a loan or repayment basis, that we do it in a godly way that will glorify you. Amen. How's everybody doing? Good night. Good night. Good night. Welcome to Tuesday Night Bible Study. If you missed the opening segment, please know this is the fourth of a five-part series about how the Bible teaches to be wise with money. Tonight we're talking about borrowing money, loans, credit cards, and mortgages. Last week we spoke about trying to save and invest properly by building things in the environment that would increase and or hold the money in specific ways so that it can be used prudently later. We spoke about real estate, building businesses, insurance, and all sorts of other things. Tonight we want to talk about the expense part, which is probably the more difficult to discuss. I open by talking very briefly about something from Exodus chapter 22, verses 25 to 27. And it may seem as if Jesus is trying to revert and or change those things that he says here through Moses to the people in Luke chapter 6. But I wanted to look closely and see that how God operates is by a system of knowing how we look to each other and ensuring that we don't harm each other. So in Exodus chapter 22, we get some things in relation to borrowing and saying that you should not charge interest to those who are around you, who mean the most to you, your kinsmen. And you should not, at the points of issue, hold somebody's clothing and you can easily give it back. Which was simply a way to say, ensure you're neighborly to somebody. Don't overdo the way in which you deal with finances and resources. That's basically what he was saying. And so in Luke chapter 6, we get this next set of phrasings where God is trying to give the Sermon on the Mount, and then he talks about how it is that some people tend to just don't love those around them unless they love them too. And trying to show you that those who are sinful or those who need their assistance the most, or even those who mistreat you, you should return and do the same thing, which is a basic principle where he says to overcome evil with good and or do things correctly with others despite how they may have mistreated you. Um, I'm going to skip up to verse 32, but you will see that it says Luke 6:34 to 35 in my section on the bottom. And I'm going to start at 32 so you get the fullness of what Jesus was trying to say. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And so he now comes to the hard part. So if you look closely in Exodus chapter 22, it was talking about them dealing with each other as Israelites and not giving interest. And if your brother has a cloak and you took it, make sure you return it by sunset. But now he digs deeper. He digs into to them to realize that people who are around them, who they presume are sinners because they're not following the laws of Moses, are also importantly those who they should treat well too, and those who mistreat them. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? So if you are doing things only to gain, meaning you're only gonna give to somebody because you know you're gonna get something back, or you're lending to somebody who you know has the ability to repay you, what is the credit in that? Even sinners, those who you look down on, and do their business in the atmosphere. They give and they lend to those who they know can repay them. But look how Jesus puts it. Not just expect to get repaid, but you know you can get repaid in full. But God now says, love your enemies and do good to them and lend to them anyways without expecting to get anything back. And then he says, Jesus, then your reward will be great and you will be children of the Most High because he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. In the KJV, this is NIV I'm reading. I know this is hard. There's a reason I did it first because it's gonna take a bit of talking to get through. Oh my God, it is hard because we always feel we have to be bartering and getting back something for which we put out, so we can balance or so that we can ensure that we live to the best of our abilities. Jesus is teaching something different in relation to how you are not in a deficit when you're working for God. You're just not in a deficit. And so those who want to harm you, or maybe have already harmed you, those who you know that you probably won't get anything back from, those who you call sinners, he says you still must be kind to them. And you see how it puts it in the KJV, unthankful and those who do evil. But he said, be merciful to them because your Father is also merciful. A high standard of knowing how to forgive and do things and figuring out things despite the resources that you presume you have or you don't have. A high standard by which you now have to put yourself so that you know you're on the upper grounding and doing right by God. It is something that many, will have a difficulty with because they say, well, this person did me wrong, so then I need to get back what I'm owed now. This person over here is not my brother or my sister. They're not of the same ethnicity as me. So why do I need to be treating them as if, later down the road, this person will see me and assist me in some way? Jesus further put that ethnic type of tussle in context by talking about the parable of the Good Samaritan, which we all know. And it simply showed a kind of a test to the persons who were around who disliked persons from that region. And so he used somebody in the parable from that region of Samaria to show that, look, this person came and helped, yet others came who should have known better or should have helped and were even religious, and they did not. It was his way of turning our eyes inward. Because we love to look outward and say, this person owes me this person owes me this. These things are going on that are sinful over here. I cannot come and help this person here. This person that debt that I have to repay me now. Did we look inward to see the debts that we have with God or with others? Did we look inward to see the brokenness or the places where we have become an enemy to others or those around us who we should have been serving and we owe a debt that we probably could not pay? Oh my God, Jesus came and this debt of sin, none of us can pay. Only perfection is the standard by which we can pay it. And so Jesus paid it. He loves you. He knows you have your issues. He knows that you are broken inside and have your problems. And still he forgives you and died on your behalf. While we were yet sinners, he died for us. So why is it that we presume that we should go around in this kind of surly, unsure, kind of dangerous type of talking state, and then by this feeling that we're gonna lack if we don't get the full measure of repayment here, then we're gonna have a problem. The majority of people in the modern world don't have that problem because usually there's always somebody around who can help you. Always something going on that you can tap into and earn an income. Always somewhere that you can move around and get something done. And if you don't believe so, then you have dropped into a lie that the devil or the enemy wants to put you into, which makes you presume that around you is just challenging and broken all the time. We spoke about that in the first episode, where I went in depth talking about saints in the Bible and how they stewarded things, but I concentrated in the first section on some very important in relation to the lie that luck presumes to want to put into your brain. If you missed that, please go back, look for it on whichever channel you may be watching it on Facebook or YouTube. How is everybody doing? I see people popping up in different places, some on YouTube. How's everybody doing? Put something in the live chat, please, and say good night to your fellow church members and fellow watchers. And also, if it is that you have a question, please do put it there. Please note my first question, which is a true or false question, which says, true or false, all debt is bad for you. I think you already know the answer from some of the things I'm currently discussing. Luke 3 verse 14 says, and the soldiers likewise. So in Luke chapter 3, there is a bit here about John the Baptist preaching in the wider countryside and near the Jordan. And While he was doing what he was doing, the soldiers and many other persons came to him and publicans, and some asked him for advice. The first set that is listed here, interestingly, he says something very similar to what we have just discussed. Generally, the people asked him, "What should we do?" And he said to them, "If you have two coats, let him part impart to him that had none, and he that had meat, let him do likewise." And the publicans asked some things after they were baptized and said, "What should we do?" And he said to them, "Exact no more than that which is appointed to you." So he was trying to go into the minds and the hearts of each set of persons. One were just general people, and he's saying to them, "Whatever you have, give and be friendly to the people around you." To the persons who are like tax collectors or having to do with things legislative wise or in the marketplace and doing things. He said to them, "Don't have unjust skills." I'm paraphrasing what he said. He actually said in the KJV, he said, "Exact no more than which is appointed to you." Don't take more than what you really need. Don't take more than the market value of what is there. Don't ask more than what you are valued on worth for what you're doing. And then to the soldiers, which is what is listed here in Luke 3:14, they asked him also the same question. And he said to them, "Don't do violence to anybody, nor should you accuse anybody falsely, and to be content with the wages for which they had." Because obviously, a lot of them abused people, accused people falsely to probably bring them into court so that somebody chickeny and get some money or then get some money. And they also probably extorted people while they were on the road and doing their work. Similarly, in Luke chapter 12, this is John the Baptist speaking to people, publicans, and soldiers. In Luke chapter 12, it says, very interestingly, from verses 13 to 21, that somebody came to Jesus and asked him. Let me try to project this specific one. It's a little more wordy. Something about giving inheritance to somebody who was his brother, or rather, he wanted his brother or his relative to give him their inheritance. I can't recall if it said that it was owed the person. I don't think it just said, "Give me the inheritance. Tell my brother to give me the inheritance. Master, speak to my brother that he divide the inheritance with me." In the older times, you will know very quickly that it's usually the older that is given the inheritance. And by some nature of how they split up their wills and did what they needed to do, it was done in a way so that each got as much as was required and as much as they needed to go forward with the lives that they had. And so here we have somebody who decides to ask Jesus to be a judge for him and assist him with his affair. And I'm going to switch to the NIV to try to make it as plain in English as possible. And you will see that Jesus' response is another test which is given, similar to what we read earlier from Matthew chapter 6. Give me a second, please, as I switch to the next version of the Bible. Luke 12, verse 13. Below this part where he's trying to teach the person who asked him something about inheritance, he very quickly said a parable, which in the NIV is being labeled as the parable of the rich fool. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And then Jesus says, "Who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" The irony of it is that, yes, Jesus is your most valuable advocate. He is the master magistrate. He's the one who has and knows all of the laws. So he was testing him now. And then he says to him, very interestingly, "Watch out. Be on guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." Let me pause there and come back to my face for a brief moment. How's everybody doing? Anybody have any questions? Anybody have the answer to the question which is there? Hey, how you doing? How you doing, Miss Morgan? I see you. Good night, good night, good night, good night. Good night, everybody who's popping out there. Hmm. Anybody know the answer to the question which is flashing across the bottom of the screen? So it's apparent from how Jesus responded that he wanted people to understand two things. He was a judge, he's the advocate, he's the magistrate, he's the lawgiver, he is a great moral accountant. And two, that the person who was asking the question seemed not to really be asking because he was really owed something, but because he just needed something. He was just wanting his brother to give him something. And so Jesus said to him, be careful because this need for the things of life will make you have a problem. And he explains the problem by giving the parable, which we will read shortly, which says this: the ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. You will note that out of these things that I've been reading here, I've given all sorts of parables in the last three. This is the fourth sessions. We've talked about the parable of the talents. We've talked about another parable where a rich man asked his manager to go out and do some things to settle his affairs. It was called the parable of the shrewd manager. This one is called the parable of the rich fool. You see how many things Jesus gave and spoke about in relation to money. So it said, the ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. So he's not doing what we saw Joseph did. If we remember from the first episode, we spoke about a patriarch called Joseph, and he stored up some things for 7 years because 7 years of famine was coming. And so what God assisted him to do was to keep in storage for a barren season and also help the country for which he was in and also help the surrounding regions and nations and tribes from where they were. What this man was doing was hoarding some things up and then saying he's going to live up his life now. And he was going to just do his thing because now he's rich and then he's going to just store up some things and get richer and eat and drink and be merry. But God said to him, this is verse 20, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? So this is somebody who's not concerned about anybody that's around him. He clearly had enough where he could store and probably give or assist somebody somewhere or even barter some more and assist somebody to assist somebody else. That's not what he was doing. He's keeping it for himself, hoarding, storing things around, and God now says to him that was foolish. Watch what the rest of this parable does. And then Jesus says very quickly, this is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. So remember this very quickly. Borrowing money is not sinful or incorrect. What is sinful and incorrect is lending unjustly or borrowing and not repaying back what you borrowed. And so comes the preamble to everything that I'll discuss later, in relation to credit cards and loans and mortgages? The answer to the question, which you see scrolling across the bottom of the screen, is of course false. All debt is not bad. We read a while ago how it is that we owe a debt to somebody. His name is Jesus Christ, who died on all of our behalves. Our behalf. Now it is that we can't pay that debt. We cannot pay the debt. We cannot be perfect. We cannot be fully holy. We cannot be justified by our works. But Jesus did what we couldn't do so that we can now borrow into his righteousness. So that term borrow come again. We saw and we read where Moses said that sure you can borrow something, but make sure you return it over a period of time. We saw and we understood that there is a point where it says the things in relation to you lending, you must do it in a way that is just and not just do it so you can earn and gain lots of stuff from it. We do that in our common age, and you know what the real reason why they do it is? The majority of the times, it's not because it is to earn, Some will disagree with me. But you know something called inflation? It is a disgusting bit of life where what one thing valued way back in time values 5, 10 times what it valued before. And so, yes, there are actually businesses and institutions who do these things so that they can earn a living or make something or a profit. But when you, in your own space of working and trying to do some things, needs to talk and figure out some things in relation to finances, ensure you don't do it at some exorbitant rate or try to, as Moses was saying, damage somebody who is not so well off, and then have him crying out to God, and then you will get your recompense. Nehemiah decided when this is the Old Testament I'm jumping back to try to show you why it is that Jesus gave this reference about the rich fool, quote unquote, as well as why John gave those things that he mentioned and spoke to the publicans, regular people, as well as soldiers. Because it is a principle which we saw in Exodus 22, but which we will also now see from Nehemiah, where it is that some were, in an attempt to help, overdid it. Now the men and their wives raised a great outcry against their fellow Jews. Some were saying, we and our sons and daughters are numerous. In order for us to eat and stay alive, we must get grain. Others were saying, we are mortgaging our fields, our vineyards, and our homes to get grain during the famine. Still others were saying, we have had to borrow money to pay the king's tax on our fields and our vineyards. So there are 3 or 4 set of things going on here. Some were borrowing money to pay the tax. We still do those things. Sometimes we have to borrow money to pay back money that we owe, which gives us into a revolving issue. Sometimes we have to mortgage something, a land or a property or an asset or a house, so that we get something. And the reason why this was happening was because the economy was out of scale. So there was the people under the rule of Babylon, after a point in time or in this specific season. Please tell me if you can still hear me. when Nehemiah came back in, he was trying to assist. Please let me know if you're hearing me still and by a thumbs up. Nehemiah was trying to build back the walls around what he was doing with the nature of the. Please let me know with a thumbs up if you can hear what I'm saying here, please. Oh, great. Thank you. My able assistant is there. Wow, thank you. And everybody else, big up yourselves. Please, if you have any questions from what we've read from Exodus or Luke so far, please do give a query in there. And if you understand why it is that I said it is false, where it says all debt is bad, then please let me know. If you don't understand why, then you can put a query in there or ask a question if you like. All right. Thank you. Now it is that Nehemiah has a problem. He is here trying to build back the walls around the area of Jerusalem and the main place, and it is giving him a problem. He's having a problem. Let me know if this thing is projected on your end. And some crying out to him because they have to borrow money to pay the tax. Some crying out to him because they have to mortgage their fields and their vineyards or their homes. And so he says, although we are of the same flesh and blood as our fellow Jews, and though our children are as good as theirs, yet we have to subject our sons and daughters to slavery. So this is not meaning the king, meaning Xerxes, asking for the tax to then get, and he's a different ethnic group. It was the same people who were governing them, who were assisting to do some things, to then give it to do what they were doing in the society and give it back to the king from Babylon and the others from the Medes and the Persians. And so there's a problem because it goes against what it is said in Exodus 22. We saw it a while ago. And so Nehemiah got upset. Some of our daughters have already been enslaved, but we are powerless because our fields and our vineyards belong to others. So if you understand, the economy was out of, it was all over the place. And so in order to get to balance it, the people at the top decided to take more tax. Because they decided to take more tax, the people at the bottom didn't have enough. And so they started to mortgage their field or their vineyard or their homes. When that ran out and they still were unbalanced and they didn't gain as much income to reverse the balance, now it is that they decided that they were going to borrow money from others to then pay to those same people. And here it is where it said that even their daughters and their sons went into enslavement for them to get the money. If they couldn't borrow it, or get the money if they couldn't mortgage the home, or if all of those other things had already ran dry. And so let me project like this. And if you think that this is something like old time, what kind of background, and this is this thing Johnny reading on Tuesday night Bible study. But you have to understand that sure, in this modern age, we have credit cards and we have mortgage stuff. We mentioned mortgaging, the same thing. We have things in relation to loans, and we have different types of loans. But I wanted to know that there are different parts in the world that may not have structures as good as we do, that still do some things weird like that. But also that we still do things like that. That sometimes we run out of the cash and we try to gain by the income, but it's not balancing, and then we decide to borrow a loan in another way or try to get some money in another way, right? And that is where a cycle of indebtedness can stifle you so that you don't have the right things going on, and then in generation it passes down and messes with the persons who you then birth who come into a similar situation. That was the reason why that law was given through Moses. That was the reason why God instituted it, so that each could live as neighborly with each other. There's less strife. It doesn't cause wars. It doesn't cause turmoil. It doesn't cause issues amongst each other, so that the balance of the economy can stay afloat so that everybody does what they need to do. Barters can live free, work and do business with those who are around them, and life will be a little more pleasing. But here it was, there was enslavement, there was a lot of indebtedness, poverty, there were all sorts of a high rate mortgages, and then the outcry came. And here comes Nehemiah. And he says, when I heard their outcry and these charges, I was very angry. I pondered them in my mind and then accused the nobles and the officials. I told them, you are charging your own people interests? So I called together a large meeting to deal with them and said, as far as possible, we have bought back our fellow Jews who were sold to the Gentiles. Now you are selling your own people only for them to be sold back to us. Interesting, right? So they had used some of the treasury and people had gone around borrowing so that they could get people who were indebted to persons who had taken them over, right? So that they can come back and live and be at peace in their own home. But because the economy was tilted, instead of doing what Moses had said before they reached this point, which is centuries later, they decided because they need to get something out of this, they were going to sell back the same people to them, to each other. Now you are selling your own people only for them to be sold back to us. They kept quiet because they could not find nothing to say. So I continued, what are you doing? What you are doing is not right. Shouldn't you walk in the fear of our God to avoid the reproach of our Gentile enemies? I and my brothers and my men are also lending the people money and grain. But let us stop charging interest. So you see, Nehemiah was all doing his work, lending things to people, giving the grain, giving the money. The interest wasn't even charged. I can guarantee you they probably even give away some of it without expecting anything back. Yet there were others who were around unbalancing the equation, and then we had the problem. So he said to them, give them back what they're supposed to get. Give them back immediately their fields and their vineyards and their olive groves and their houses. And also the interest you are charging them. 1% of the money, grain, new wine, and olive oil. We will give it back, they said, and we will not demand anything more from them. We will do as you say. Wow. It goes all the way down to verse 19, where nobles and officials came forward and they decided to keep their promises, and all sorts of things happened. And by the 20th reign of Artaxerxes, he appointed a different uh, governor, and he started to do some things and take some shekels of silver to add wine and food into the courts of the land, and assembled persons there to work, and all sorts of things going on, and allowed the very nature of the food and the wine and the oil and everything to go and flow as best as he can. And then he prays and says, remember me with favor, my God, for all I have done for these people. Remember me with favor for all I have done for these people. It reminds me of the phrase that we always say that, oh God, allow all that come behind me to find us faithful. We have to pray this. We have to see this with our brothers and sisters. We have to come together so that we don't damage each other. How can you be lending in an unfair or unjust scale manner? How can you be borrowing and then you don't pay back once it is just an assist those who are around you? Even if it's not just, try pay it back and move on and adjust what you're doing. But the problem, as you could see, was that there an over emphasis on the need to ensure that you are okay, that you now have things that you can do in the environment that you're in without worrying about what it will do to the people around you. If you take and you take and you take and you take and you take, then what will happen is that the balance is on tip, and then the poverty or the enslavement or the indebtedness coming, the strife, the turmoil will start. And before you know it, when you thought you were getting rich, then some people will start to probably worry you, or there will be poverty and then criminal gangs and all sorts of things around you, and then you see the problem. Then you see why it is that we have all sort of problems, because the economy will shift. It shifts in the favor of those who work diligently and love those who are around them to the best of their abilities. It always does. And those who do the opposite, who presume that they will get something out of it, will always find out later that nothing will go so. And the damages would already have been done, and then they have to change and do what was correct anyway. That's exactly what you see there with Nehemiah. That's exactly what you will read in the pages of the Bible with all sorts of people who had to be corrected and done something differently. Remember Jesus and Zacchaeus? If you don't know that tale, just Google it and look it up later. Remember Peter with the people who was trying to put some things together so that those who were less fortunate in the early church could have something. Remember Stephen, who assisted and led the set of people who dealt with the widows and the orphans. Remember when he was enraged, Peter, when two people came in and decided that they were going to tell him the opposite of what they actually possessed or brought in. Ensure that we're doing the just scales. Either if we're lending, we lend properly, justly. If we're borrowing, take what we need to take. Try to figure out and be honest with how we're doing our dealings. Return it as best as we can. Now, the financial institutions, and there are too numerous to name, all sorts of commercial banks, all sorts of credit unions, all sorts of investment institutions. Take all these things that I have just said into note. And what they have are systems where they can do credit reports. So I'm going to move from the theological to the technical part now and the actual thing. And so when it is that you're taking these things out, they look at how, and each have their own scale. There's a specific 2 or 3 main scales that's used up north. We have one, and we even have a credit bureau and things like that. And they look to see if you have taken credit before, whether it's loans or credit card, how good you were at repaying it, or if you have defaulted in any nature of any of them. They also look at the assets that you possess, how much each are, and how much your current monthly income is, as well as how much expenses you have. That will balance, and then it will bring you to a certain amount of surplus per month. So there are all sorts of things that are put into place to then see if you are eligible to get that loan. And if you go to financial institutions and you're trying to ensure that you are responsible, do not lie to the people. Do not tell them that you make certain amount of money that you don't make. And don't ever presume to give them the documentation and then you say the expenses are such and such, and this means I have such and such when it's not. And then when the time comes and a few months pass and you may pay some and then you'll default later, you have now unbalanced their balance books and the debt collectors come and you are frustrated. This is a problem that we have in the world. The reason why these things are put in place are to help you. So you may take a loan and you say, all right, I'm going to use this for educational purposes. I'm going to use this to buy something that I need for my home. I don't have all the full money now, but this is where I am in my life. Measure it, sir, accountant. Measure it, sir, credit officer. Measure it, sir, loans officer. And then they look and say, all right, this is the amount you can get at this point in time. You go through the process and you pay back the amount little by little. You can do this either by what they call an unsecured loan. Please know that some of the financial institutions have nice digital-based platforms that will allow you, because they know you have a certain amount passing through your account every month, a certain amount each month that they know that you can pay back. And they will allow that without even checking much more or checking your credit history and things like that. That's what they call an unsecured loan. Secured loan is a more deeper check of your finances up to us, and it can. And the reason why they're doing it is one, usually because it's at a higher rate of interest, or it is because they're about to lend you a larger amount of money. And then you can do an auto loan, and people categorize loans in different ways. Some say unsecured versus secured, some say high interest versus low interest. The low interest loans are usually loans that are taken out at a higher or longer duration of time, which are usually auto loans or home loans. Home loans are usually up to the point when you retire and or 20 years, 20 to odd years. The ones that are car loans are usually somewhere between 5 to 7 years, depending on the type of vehicle, the cost of it, and how much they think you have that you can pay back each month. Those two loans, auto and home, are the ones that we struggle through a lot more because we have to have the vehicle to travel and do what we need to do, and we have to live somewhere. But those are lower interest loans that are at a lower percentage that you pay back each year. But even though it's low, because what you're paying for is higher than the normal stuff, things that you normally pay for, it usually spreads and compounds and becomes a problem. And you pay back more than you actually borrowed. But the reason why that is the financial institutions are doing something where they're accruing inflationary balances over a period of time. Now it is that you have to think clearly and urgently about why it is that you want that loan in the first place. If you can afford it, and if you need help, then you seek help with the financial people. Let them sit down and look over your figures with you. If this time around when you come, it's not quite okay, then you build up back more income, you build up some equity somewhere, you save some more money somewhere, and or maybe you build up more credit on other things. We'll talk about credit cards in a minute. And then they will look through your finances and assist you to reach where you need to go. Psalm 37, verse 21 says, "The wicked borrow and do not repay, but the righteous give generously." No, oh God, let me read further down. "Those the Lord blesses will inherit the land, but those he curses will be destroyed." I'll read more about this later, further down, right? When we talk about home and lands and those things. But I want you to see that you are not put here to just pay utilities, pay bills and loans and just that. Concentrate, please, on the things that I mentioned earlier in the income part of all of these things last week, and see, quite frankly, that the world is abundant and it's able to allow you to move and save and invest and build things and earn things and increase your qualification and improve your career and increase your income level or do something on the side and increase even more money so that you can do some of these things. I will say to you that you must do these things diligently and honestly. Please read what is below here on the screen, and you will see, quite frankly, that it says that you must please seek out your financial institutions, seek out your legal entities, check the policies for which the things that you're going to try to do in your life, and ensure that you follow it well and approach it with diligence so that you do it well. The second question I have for you tonight is this: if you receive a loan from a financial institution, A, use it any way you please. B, it must be managed prudently. C, that means you got free money. D, God wants you to spend it. I hope you know the right answer. I'm going to allow it to keep scrolling across the bottom of the screen. No, you don't have to get personal loans alone. We mentioned last week that you can build businesses or you can do things in the environment to earn an income through entrepreneurship. And so those set of people can take a what is known as business loans or loan repayments. And note very quickly that you can do it through something called general loans, which are very similar to the ones I mentioned for personal loans. It's just that more than likely, because it is a business loan, you have the ability to borrow more type of money than if you were just borrowing for yourself personally. Know also that there are other types of ways that these loans can be calculated or figured out. There's something called invoice factoring, where a financial institution, I've seen some both here locally and abroad, allowing where they know you're supposed to be able to get paid by your creditors over a period of time, a certain amount of money over a certain period of time. So these are checked and balanced. But you currently, because you're trying to improve the cash flow in your company or your business or whatever organization you have, are at a deficit. So you're trying to ensure you pay some taxes, you pay some people who have helped you, you pay other suppliers, you pay some other day-to-day runnings of your business. And they look at it and they say, all right, I will lend you this amount because I know you will earn back this amount over this period of time. And you can show them these details and they will, quite frankly, assist you once everything checks out and is balanced. You must also know that the way that some people do business, you're going to have to be very careful to log and look at everything that you do, so that this is a reason why you have to have good financial or accounting going on, so that when it is that a creditor comes, they can know where you are and how they can assist you. And also, if it is that you're trying to figure out where it is that you're having an issue with your expenses, if you're spending too much somewhere, or where you can improve your income, then once you have had, you don't have to be perfect, but you must have something written down somewhere. You must have some things being balanced somewhere. You must have some ideas so that you can know, all right, on this end of the business, I am making this certain amount of money. On this end of the business, I am spending this amount on utilities or on employees each month. And so, if I come to this institution and say, this is my next 3 to 6 year plan, these are my projections. These are the things in relation to how much persons who are my current debtors will pay me over a certain amount of time. This is how much this product, which is already making this amount, will make over this point in time. And then you're able to get the loan easier or to get some things going easier. But if you're not sure, and this is something we spoke about in the second episode, budgeting and saving and investing. That's why I put that first. Because if you don't have that, then when you reach the stage where you need to borrow or you need to get some assistance, then nobody will be able to help you as good as you could, or you still have to go backwards and write down everything and tabulate it and put it together so that now people who want to help you can help you. It says in Deuteronomy 28, verse 12, the Lord will open the heavens, the storehouse of his bounty, to send rain on your land in season and to bless all the work of your hands. You will lend to many nations, but will borrow from none. Nice, right? The Lord will make you the head and not the tail. We love quoting these things. You will lend to many nations and men not borrow. The Lord will make you the head and not the tail. Oh, the storehouses of his bounty will open. The rains will come in its due season, and his heavens will be open, and he will bless the bounty of your goodness and the lands that are around you. But oh God, I wish it is that we will take better management of our finances so such a thing can happen. It doesn't happen by quoting and repeating itself to yourself all the time. It puts your mind in the framework to then go and do the things which are necessary for God to assist you to then be successful. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7 says this. Before I reach there, you see where it says in verse 1, a good name is more desirable than great riches, to be esteemed better than silver and gold. The rich and poor have this in common. The Lord is the maker of them all. So no matter who it is that you think you are or where you are with your finances, Lord God is sovereign over you, is in charge of you. What he wants you to do is go into the things that you know he says are right in relation to your finances and how you manage them, and then you will improve. The rich rule over the poor, but the borrower is slave to the lender. You see? So it it's kind of a rudimentary way to show you that you have the ability to go out and do some things in where you are, to improve in a way that now you can become the lender. It's not saying that it is bad to borrow. It is saying that you should put yourself in a good management status with yourself financially so that you can accrue enough finances to then be a blessing to those who are around you. That was what Deuteronomy 28 was saying. It wasn't saying that, oh, you must be better than those around you and you will, prosper and you must, like conquer them or as it says there, which people presume is what it's saying, that now it is that you are going to be their Lord or your rich master over them. No, that's not to say. It's just simply saying that once you manage your finances properly, once it is that you remember who the Lord your maker is, that you can now be a blessing to others and teach them good lessons too, so that they move better in a better path. Why would you not see that if you receive a loan from a financial institution, the answer for what I'm about to tell you, for what's going across the screen, the answer should be B, that it must be managed prudently. The reason why we sometimes do not see it is because we just trying to figure out our money and we do our thing, but we forget, quite frankly, that God is allowing these things to us so we can manage them well and then improve and move to the next stage of wherever it is that He has asked us to go to. Now, credit cards are also something which are not managed as well as they could. So please note, if you're taking notes, it's like a accounting or management class 101. That one, loans are not bad. It's how you use it and how you ensure that you're using it only for purposes that it is necessary for, and also only if you know you can pay it back. And two, that loans can be divided into either secured or unsecured loans. It can also be divided into the type of loans that you're doing, whether it's personal, business, or credit, auto, or home. But it can also be divided into the type of way in which it is interested. It can be a low interest type of loan, or it can be a high interest type of loan. And so we spoke about personal loans and business loans already. And now what we want to talk about very quickly are credit cards. Now, credit cards, a cha-ching, the MasterCards and the Visas and the things that we use to credit is not just given to us. And I have another question scrolling across the screen very quickly. So that we can spend on anything that we want to. How I tend to use my credit card is to top it up and then pay for things and then ensure I don't pay for anything that I would not normally pay for. If I do, then I make a note of it and ensure I pay it back at the end of the month. That's all it is to be used for. It is like a loan that the bank or the financial institution gives you, whether for personal or business, that is to be paid back once you use it for what you were using it for. And the general reason why they give you a certain limit is because they already check the number of money that is going to your account or how much equity you have and are balancing it so they know you can pay it back. So why would you spend more than the amount there? Some people tend to spend the amount, rack up the interest, and then have a problem. That's not the reason why you should use it. The only reason you should do such a thing is if there's like a serious emergency, like a very serious emergency, and you have to pay for something, and you know that it's on the card, but you're gonna have to try now. Think about that you spent more than you were supposed to and pay it back little by little over time. If you go over a certain amount for the card for the month, you will have to pay an interest. If you go over a certain amount, it will reach the limit anyways. And what you end up tend to be doing is paying back the amount plus the interest. And the interest on it is fairly high because it is a loan that the bank is giving you, which is a high interest rate one. But it is not a trap. It was not meant to be a trap. It was meant for you to use it for a certain amount, pay it back as the month ends, and then use it again and pay it back as the month ends. Interestingly, because of how it is set up, it was intended also for you to gain rewards. So you can gain travel rewards. You can gain rewards every time you spend it on food, utilities, and gas. Many of the financial institutions do those things. And so when you spend it at the supermarket, you spend it at the gas station, you spend it when you're paying those utility bills for water and light, and when it is that you're traveling, the points rack up over time. And then you get a refund or money back into the account. And or it's just like when you go to the supermarket and you have a loyalty card or a discount card and you swipe it, and a certain amount of what you paid went into the card, so that when you come back the next time, maybe there's a certain amount of money on it that you can use to then pay for something else. But you have got to be diligent with it. This is something that is a major crisis, not just in this region, but in the entire world, where people have this tendency to spend more than they know they possess. And it's usually because we have so many expenses and we haven't looked to check to make sure we are okay and we're balancing how we can. I will implore you not to spend more than you possess when you get the credit card, because it will become a burden for you later and you can have problems or you put yourself in debt. And then where you thought you was improving and doing well on one side of the equation or helping somewhere, you end up being outstanding somewhere else, and then you cause a problem which imbalances your equation with your family member or with the community that you're helping or working with somewhere, or where you wanted to do something and you still have to sit down and you have this mountain of credit card interest paying back every month. Romans 13 verse 8 says, let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another, for whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. Now the next low interest loan similar to the auto loan is mortgages. And you can take out mortgages for both home and lands. The We mentioned some statutory deduction you could need to take out. Last week, I believe we were talking about income generation and monetary financial management and investing. And we mentioned then that you can use a government agency in Jamaica called the NHT that holds some of your money when you pay taxes, but also add it to financial institutions if the amount that the NHT is going to be able to lend you is less than the amount that the home um, is is uh, is is total or the balance of which you need to pay for it. Similarly, the financial institutions, just like I mentioned, credit cards and personal or business loans will help you looking through your finances to see how well you are, how much you probably need to increase your income by, as well as if you have enough equity to balance and pay them back the loan from which you possess. No, this is a sore point for many because the housing prices have gone back up because of inflation. But I will say to you that it seems almost as if we have come into a season. Remember, I read something from Jeremiah last week that yes, it's a season of increased strain and stress, but there still is a possibility for you to do some things in this season. Next week, we're going to talk quickly about giving to the needy and lending and charity and tithes and things like that. But because of the nature of this talk about credit cards and mortgages and loans and things like that, I want to introduce you to looking through your finances properly so that you balance the budget of what you're doing. But I also want to do two other things. Show you how you can save up and do what you need to pay off credit cards. And it's really just mathematics. It's really just ensuring that you pay back more than the interest and then add another amount onto the card and then keep doing that over a sustained period of time until the balance reverses. And then it reaches back to the full and then you can keep using it over and over like you should have before you misused it. Similarly, you usually in Jamaica and many other parts of the world, there's a certain percentage that a developer tends to ask you to want to pay a deposit towards a home. How these work is if you don't have the full amount, and it's usually quite a lot, so most people don't have that amount, unless they're doing business somewhere or inheriting quite a bit before they reach the point where they need it to buy a home. And it's usually either 5 or 10%. But then remember, please, that you also have closing costs that the developer may have, as well as the institution that you're going to be borrowing money from. And also there may be legal things, like papers you need to sign, uh, land title related matters that lawyers need to get involved in, and there may be a cost to that as well. And so remember, it's not just the 5 or the 10%, but it's the additional also other costs that will add on, and it may end up somewhere more between 12 to 15 to even 20% that you have to be saving of the total of that property to ensure you can now pay down a deposit and start the process now after of paying a mortgage or a monthly amount each month to pay down on the property. It's difficult. It's when I say difficult, it is something that requires brain power. I don't mean that it cannot be done or that it's hard to do. It's just that it needs you to concentrate properly and do the best with balancing the budget of how you're managing your affairs. Please look at question 3, which says credit cards. Let me project by my face for a brief moment, pause this thing about mortgages for a brief moment, and come back to credit cards for a brief moment, where it says credit cards are a debt trap. B, a way for financial institutions to hold their assets. C, helpful if managed properly. And D, free credit from the bank. I hope you know what the answer is. We spoke about all of those possible and also not right answers. Let's kick back to mortgage discussions. And so this thing here in Proverbs 22, I want you to read it and look at it very quickly, where it says, do not be one who shakes hands in pledge or puts up security for debts. Mortgage is in the French a debt pledge. If you lack the means to pay, your very bed will be snatched from under you. Do not move an ancient boundary stone and that was set up by your ancestors. So you see how it's showing you that you must be just in how you deal with your land, or maybe how you set up your wills and your property assessment and the things that you need to do. Do you see someone skilled in their work? They will serve before kings. They will not serve before officials of low rank. No, you are somebody who is moving in your environment, trying to do the best with managing any debt or any borrowed thing that you possess. Ensure you do so wisely. Ensure that the credit card is not showing some weird things all over the place that you probably never needed to buy. Ensure that you're managing how you pay back your personal loans. Ensure that the very things that you are doing online, and you're just going onto a shopping area, you're buying something simply because it looks nice, but it didn't balance to say, do I really need this one? And two, can I afford it? Many times the credit card or the loan gets out of balance because you bought something that you didn't need, or you bought something that you couldn't afford at the point in which you bought it. Take time with yourselves, please. Borrow money, but borrow it honestly and diligently. Take space to know that you can correct yourself if you made some errors in the past. We'll talk about that next week. And it's like a part 2 of the budgeting section. And you're going to have to be diligent and disciplined. You're going to have to go and look at something, figure out your income and your expenses, figure out where you went wrong, adjust it, and then leave a balance so you pay back some of the things that you may be askew in. And then once you've erased some of that, you start saving some money down, investing some money somewhere, and then also trying to build up some equity somewhere and do some things so that you can have pay back some things, get some homes and businesses running and some things going on around you. But if you approach your life in the kind of wrong way that the people in Nehemiah's days were, and then a Nehemiah has to come and ask you some questions, then you know you have gone too far. You know that you have reached a point where even the accountant from your bank probably can bring in a creditor. So ensure that we do things right so that you will know that the answer to question 3 is C. Credit cards are helpful, but you have to manage them properly. C is the answer to this last question. They are helpful, but they have to be managed properly. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. Anybody have any questions so far? Anybody have any issues with any Bible verse that they want to go back over? Anybody have any thoughts that they were unsure of or they just need some help with? to just go over and revamp, right? And so when it is that you are doing these things, everything must be approached in a diligent and disciplined way. Everything must be done as honestly as you can do that. Everything must, I'm just looking through the comments to see if I missed anything. Everything must be done uh, in a way that you know you can do it. The majority of times when we go out of province because we're spending more than we're supposed to, or we're borrowing more than we're supposed to, or we splurging on something that we probably shouldn't be splurging on, or we bought something that we didn't even need to buy and things like that. Balance yourself. Be prudent. Approach your life well. Learn to budget. Learn to balance where you are. And then all of a sudden, some of the things in your life will look a little more wiser and a little better, and you will be well on your way to doing things for God, doing things that you know are wise, doing things where they will look at you and they will know that you've been a good manager and a good steward of the things that you possess. Looking through the things that where you are, good night, good night, good night, good night, good night, good night, good night. And they know that you've been trying to do the best with what you have been doing. Thanks all for joining us. The last episode will be about uh, giving to the needy, tithes, offerings, charity, taxes, and some things in relation to that. But I will try, as I mentioned, to do something very important, which is to go through a structured way to figure out your income versus your expenses and balance yourself so that you balance back to right, and also ensure that you now build up yourself in a good way to to now build equity, build up some more finances and savings, and then also work on some things for yourself. Let us pray. Lord Jesus, we thank you for this night. We thank you for all those who have streamed in. We thank you for those who are trying to learn more about managing where they are and how they can get where they need to get. Whoever it is that is trying to figure out their finances, spending their credit cards properly, ensuring that they don't go over the limits, ensuring that they build up their finances and save enough so that they can pay down on the car loan and the home loan, that they're trying to figure out how to ensure they pay their utilities and to pay for their children to go to school and to pay for the things for their lives and to help their brothers and sisters and also give around to those who are around them. Allow them to concentrate, be disciplined, allow them not to spend more than they need to or borrow more than they need to and or do more things with money than they need to and learn to be disciplined. Allow them, God, once they are balanced where they are, to now change the trajectory of their lives so that they're giving more into community, that they're giving more to themselves, that they're giving more to their families, that they're bringing a kind of freedom which will allow them to manage where they are and come into a greater sense of being a hopeful and diligent steward. We all need some challenges sometimes, God, to lead us back to you. Help us to wipe off the, the levels of bad debt, to wipe off the bad levels of indiscipline, reach the places of truth with ourselves and our brothers and our sisters. We need help, let us ask for it. If we need some mentorship, let us ask for it. If we need a borrow, let us be just and honest so that we tell and let people understand where we are and that we do return what has been given to us. If it is that we need some help to learn how to balance where we are, that we ask for it and that we budget what we have so that we are stewards who are moving properly to do things for you. Thank you, God. Thank you. You are an awesome God. And we look to you, the governor of this entire world, to govern us in the right way so that we move in tandem with you from now until forever. Amen. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This was Tuesday night Bible study. We are as ever the Hillshire United Church. We are a congregation of United Church of Jamaica and Cayman Island. Please, Facebook, Instagram, we're streaming there on Facebook and YouTube tonight, I believe. Yes. And please do note that you see some details here in relation to our email and our telephone number that you can reach out to us if you need some assistance with anything. Please do note, as you will see from the disclaimers and some of the things going across the bottom of the screen, that we, of course, are teaching some principles from the Bible, and talking some things in relation to investing and saving and building things and borrowing conscientiously. But we are not financial advisors or wealth advisors or insurance advisors or loans officers. This is something that you have to gain the right principles, seek out the help from the persons who know it the best, go through your financial institutions, allow them to look through your books and check the right fiscal policies for the things that should be done, get the right mentorship, get the right help, and then move forward better wherever or whatever stage you are in. Life is beautiful. And sometimes these financial issues can cause all sorts of strife and cause us to worry ourselves. But let us look closer at where we are now. Let us see that this world is beautiful and bright and brilliant, and that we can reach the places greater than we could ever. Yes, somebody said something very important. We need to live within our means. We need to live within our means. We need to live within the manner in which we are able to manage. And so don't worry about what the Joneses are doing over there and what the people driving a nice vehicle are doing over here. And look at the big house that person has and you wonder how they got such and such. No, don't worry about how they got such and such. Worry about what God has given you, where you can go and how you can improve yourself little by little to move to where He needs you to go to. Money is something that has been put on this earth so we can manage our affairs. But please, let's manage them in a disciplined way, and live properly with our brothers and sisters so that there's less problems and we can go on and do great things with the resources that God has blessed us with. Next week, we talk some more about this and try to also get a little mathematical. Please reach out to us if you need any assistance before then. As usual, this is Johnny Jeremy Alcock from the Hillshire United Church's Tuesday night Bible study. And please, till we see each other again, we stream every Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. We stream Sunday services once we can, every Sunday at 9. There's prayer and fasting every Saturday at 7 to 9 a.m. We have Youth Fellowship and Church School on Sundays. Please do bring out your children to that. Please do also ensure that you read the Bible and gain some of the knowledge that it is trying to give you in relation to many of these things. Thank you so much, so much, so much for joining us. And please have a great night.